Hello there, many thanks for joining us on our Thursday Business News Report. It's now time to bring you our feature on the show today as we look at the highlights of the Russia-Ukraine crisis and how this is impacting wheat production and export around the world. Now, the United States and the European Union are looking to how and when they'll be able to improve food supply chains with export restrictions from India and other nations accentuating global problems. Now, G7 foreign ministers had warned over the weekend that the war in Ukraine is increasing the risk of a global hunger crisis. This has increased the reliance on nations from other parts of the world for these products, but some of these countries concerned about supplies for their own citizens have also imposed restrictions on exports. This is the case in India, for example, which announced on Saturday a ban on wheat sales to manage the overall food security of the country. Limits on export are also likely to drive up our commodity prices and therefore food costs as well. Well, joining me now live in our Lagos studio to discuss this and much more in Nigeria's next line of action, I have Africanfarmer Mogaji, a fellow of ASHOKA. Thank you very much for joining us on the breakfast show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, since the start of this whole Russia-Ukraine crisis, we've seen global wheat prices spike about 6%, and we've also seen the futures trading. For example, in Chicago, we have about $12.40 per bushel, the highest price we've seen in about 2 months. Wheat futures also dropped a little bit on Tuesday, but so far we've seen about a 50% movement since the whole Russia-Ukraine crisis. How much of a wake-up call would you say this whole situation is, especially with India announcing that ban on export for the United States and also the EU to start thinking about immediate response for the global economy? Now, how much of a wake-up call was this?
Well, gradually it's dawning on the global community that food security is real security. So the war now, everything is moving beyond the war and now talking about food in every country. So synergizing to ensure food security of a particular continent means the food security of another continent. So what that means now is that somehow it's not about guns again. Now it's about collaboration and talking together, engaging. So India banning wheat now is just, so what they said is the banning private sector from exporting, meaning government wants to leverage wheat to negotiate with other foreign entities.
However, one of the new conversations that India is also saying is that it's going to also assist in helping to fix this whole supply chain disruptions. But now, in terms of looking for alternatives, what do you think are the opportunities here for the United States and the EU? We have producers within the EU bloc. We also have the United States, which is a major producer as well. But at the end of the day, these are blocks of nations or individual nations which also have very high consumption levels.
Yeah, behind the scenes, the reason why United States and EU they are very jittery now is because US doesn't have enough fertilizer, Europe doesn't have enough fertilizer. The fertilizer comes from Ukraine, Russia,
yes,
and China. So it's more of a food war. So now they don't have fertilizer in Europe and US to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So it's really a subject of concern now that India also wants to negotiate. They will negotiate trade.
India is also dealing with its own heat wave as well,
yes.
So that's also critical.
So India knows that with the current heat wave, they can't produce enough like they used to. US wants to leverage, they don't have enough fertilizer. EU can also produce, they don't have fertilizer. Mind you, the wheat production season in Russia and Ukraine is past. So already 2023, there's a looming crisis. So bottom line, like I said, is that it's not looking good across board, but Africa can still produce wheat because we depend on Amatan.
Africa can still produce wheat, but it's quite interesting as well. We had a report in October last year where the Central Bank of Nigeria intervened to bail farmers in terms of the challenge of inadequate seeds. This is really adjudged as one of the most important elements here in terms of wheat production and retarding efforts here. We've had farmers, researchers, industrialists constantly been faced with this production impediment. But at the end of the day, the question that begs for answers is, if we had loads of wheat, which you were also open to that information. Why do we still have this backlog we have as we speak today now? Nigeria imports about 4 to 6 million tons annually. Our production level is just an abysmal, it's not up to 10% of what we consume.
Yes, so I've come to this conclusion, and I heard it from someone before, that Nigeria, have crisis and chaos. Many leaders plan, followers panic. Unfortunately, we've had many followers lead, so everything is just panic. Anchor Borrowers program, which is a laudable one, I love the program. Over the years, the Anchor Borrowers has been also talking about wheat.
These are some of the pictures you also had from the seeds there, yes. The wheat seeds.
Yeah, the imported seeds last year. This is a new variety that is high in starch and gluten and resistant to the climate changes. However, we've not heard anything about the season in which they imported the seeds for and to plant it. So I think the presidency needs to pay attention to CBN, to demand from them, make the result known, let us know if it worked, if it didn't work. With the scale of seeds that they brought in was huge. So we need CBN to talk about real data, what has happened, for us to know, are we getting to being seed secure? Right now, India and Turkey has become part of the largest importer. They've imported a lot of wheat from India. In April 2021, India exported close to about 250,000 metric tons. This year, they've done about 1.4 million. So what I'm saying is that the CBN, with what they've done, we should be able to have some results, made public so that we know that we are wheat secure.
And how much of a problem is this lack of communication in terms of data assessment and also implementation of initiatives? Because at the end of the day, when we have such initiatives, we have to see how much of a test result we've had. How big of a problem is this for you?
It's a huge problem. I say this authoritatively, and I know I will get calls after this, is to say that the Ministry of Agriculture and Central Bank of Nigeria are not fully integrated. I use the word fully integrated in ensuring that we are food secure. They are doing it, but not fully integrated. When we are doing all these imports, it's the Ministry of Agriculture that should do all those things. So the full integration is not there. So what that means is the ministry will hold back because CBN is championing it. And so at the end of the day, we pay for it.
And all of this also tilts towards the line of transparency and how important it is to work with data. We still have these missing links. We don't necessarily understand how important data is and then planning ahead of time. Because even when we have these imported seeds, research also has to come into place. We have to see how well our system adapts to it. The soil texture here, how well do we have a production volume? We just can't continue with this missing links. But talking about the alternatives now, we've looked at the global front. Let's contextualize this issue here for Nigeria now. We have China, India, and Russia. These are the three largest individual producers. However, there is a tendency that Nigeria is not going to link with China or India, or even talk less of Russia. But when we're also looking at the fourth largest producer, that's the United States, we still cannot also ask so much from that. So we now have the likes of Canada, France, Germany, Turkey. How do you see us really finding a sustainable supply base, looking at our allies at this point in time?
There's no sustainable supply base because we could have done that.
Okay, just to prop up or add to our production volume here.
So we have to look locally. Now, European countries are all scared because, they do a lot of pastries, breakfast. Don't forget all these breakfasts is from Europe and US, Canada. So all of them are not producing enough fertilizer issue. And two, there's high demand on them. There's more threat of the war on them. So bottom line is that nobody right now is releasing farm produce, wheat and co. When you look at it also, a complementary product, which is palm oil, and Indonesia also has banned export of palm oil because the prices has gone up locally. So the oil and wheat, which translates to flour, go together. So bottom line is that we may have to look inwards to revisit the cassava starch, cassava flour rather, and other flours that can be produced locally. There are wheat varieties that I have witnessed some multinationals in Nigeria produce some of these wheat varieties that meet their requirements, but the cost of production is higher. So bottom line is that we need to pay attention to leveraging what we have. But the most important question is, do we have comparative advantage to grow wheat?
Do we have comparative advantage to grow wheat? Now, wrapping up our conversation, let's also look at the what-ifs. We cannot tell for certain how long this Russia-Ukraine crisis is going to last for. It started at the close of February. We're already in May. Nobody can say for certain whether or not the next quarter will still extend, carrying on this burden of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Now, going forward as well, what do you think might be the reality in terms of the pricing of this commodity? Because we definitely will see a further push-up. And in the case where we have another global economic disruption, how do we fare? Because we had COVID threatening agriculture base, then now the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We don't know what's coming next. Yeah. How well should we be prepared for the next surge in terms of commodity prices?
The first thing we need to know is that everyone is a change maker. Everyone can be a change maker. So Nigeria needs to pay attention to the fact that we need to change the conversation. And what we need to do is, if wheat is not coming in, what other advantage do we have? Do we eat more of our starchy foods? Cassava is supposed to drop this year, but if we have the right policy, we can tilt more into cassava flour and bridge that, even though most of the companies don't like the cassava flours. But bottom line is, all we need, we already have. What we need to do is to use all we have. Without the flour, 30 years ago, we were not heavily dependent like this. If it's not available and it can't come in, and we can't produce till dry season for next year, then we need to use all
What's also your take on those who are within the baking space, confectionery, bread, and a whole lot more? To what extent do you see the prices skyrocketing? At the start of the year, we had the Association of Bakers raise the red flag that we're going to see increments. Now, the size of a loaf of bread, which ordinarily went for about 600 to 700 naira, now goes for 1,000 naira. And if the situation gets worse, these business owners have the challenge of either compromising on quality versus quantity, or they just have to increase.
Yes, so already because
our salaries remain the same, and we have to feed.
I'm a major bread consumer, and so the prices have increased. For many of them, the quality has dropped. So many of them will face a lot of hardship. There's no two ways about it. We could have imported like Egypt and Turkey. We've not done that. It is actually late now. So we have to look for alternatives. And there is always, when there's an adversity, it always presents an equal opportunity, which is what we need to focus on. We weren't eating bread like this before, and we don't have to eat bread and other things that come from it, because the situation now warrants that we pay attention to local while we have a long-term plan. That is what the challenge is. We've not been planning long-term. There are policies to engage the multinationals involved in using wheat as pastries to get them to backward integrate. They are the ones that fund this research in other countries. Government needs to lobby them back to say, hey, this agreement is there, you need to get it. Right now, we've gotten it wrong, but we can get it right.
But nothing, no magic within the short to medium term. We have to think long term and beyond the current issues, because we cannot continue to deal with all of this aggressive short-term measures. We need to think long-term. Thank you very much once again for your time on the Breakfast Show this morning, Africanfarmer Mogaji. We keep our fingers crossed to see how the prices of wheat is also going to skyrocket, and also the interplay on the global front as well. We've been speaking with Africanfarmer Mogaji, is a fellow of ASHOKA. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.